you ever watched an NFL season and thought, how on earth did that team miss the playoffs? From 10-win squads left outside the bracket to powerhouse teams punished by outdated rules, these are the franchises that didn't just fall short, the playoff format itself robbed them. Part 8. 2008 New England Patriots, 11-5, missed playoffs. Did the NFL really keep an 11-5 team out of the playoffs while letting in an 8-8 division winner? Yep. And the 2008 New England Patriots are the ultimate example of how the playoff format can straight up rob a team. In Week 1, Tom Brady went down with a season-ending injury, and everyone assumed New England was finished. But Matt Castle stepped in and shocked the league. The Patriots clawed their way through the season, stacked up 11 wins, and looked like a team that absolutely deserved a postseason shot. In almost any other year, that record is a free ticket to January football. But the AFC East in 2008 was a traffic jam. Miami, New York, and New England were all in the mix, and when the dust settled, the Patriots lost out on the division due to tiebreakers. Miami took the top spot. The wildcard slots went to the Colts and Ravens, and New England, despite having more wins than some playoff teams in other years, was locked out. Meanwhile, the AFC West sent an 8-8 Chargers team to the postseason simply because they won their division. It didn't matter that New England had 3 more wins. The current format rewards division standings, not overall strength. And that's why the 2008 Patriots remain one of the clearest examples of how the playoff structure could punish great teams. They were good enough to scare anyone in January, but they never got the chance. Part 7. 2010 New York Giants, 10-6, lost tiebreaker. How does a team win 10 games, beat playoff-caliber opponents, stay in the race until the final whistle, and still get kicked out of the postseason by math? That's the 2010 New York Giants, a team that lived on the edge all year and collapsed at the exact moments that mattered most. The Giants actually looked like a serious contender that season. Eli Manning was slinging touchdowns, the defense was forcing turnovers, and Tom Coughlin's squad sat at 9-4 heading into mid-December. But the NFC East was a battlefield, and this division had absolutely no mercy. Every mistake felt like it counted double, and New York made just enough to let the cracks show. The turning point was the nightmare against the Eagles, miracle at the Meadowlands 2. Up 31-10 with 8 minutes left, the Giants choked away the lead before Deshaun Jackson delivered the first walk-off punt return in NFL history. That one disaster didn't just cost them a game, it blew their grip on the division. So the Giants needed a wild card spot. And that's where the heartbreak hit. They finished 10-6, the same as the Packers. But Green Bay held the tiebreakers thanks to a stronger conference record and better results against common opponents. Essentially, tiny statistical margins, not talent, slammed the door shut. What makes it sting even more? The Packers, the team that edged them out, went on to win the Super Bowl. For the Giants, the 2010 season proved something brutal. Sometimes the NFL doesn't eliminate you on the field, it eliminates you in the rulebook. Part 6. 2020 Miami Dolphins, 10-6, missed playoffs. What's more painful than grinding your way to 10 wins, only to hear, yeah, sorry, you're still not in? That was the 2020 Miami Dolphins, a team that looked ready to crash the playoff party, only to get shoved aside by one of the most brutally competitive AFC races in years. The Dolphins were one of the league's most exciting stories that season. With a young roster full of energy, a fearless Brian Flores coaching masterclass, and the unforgettable Tua and Fitzpatrick quarterback shuffle, Miami played a brand of football that felt unpredictable but thrilling. Tua Tagovailoa represented the future, Ryan Fitzpatrick represented sheer chaos, and somehow the combination worked. Miami clawed its way to a 10-5 record heading into the final week. But the AFC in 2020 wasn't just tough. It was overcrowded. 5 teams finished with 11 wins, and several others hit 10. That meant every loss, every slip, every missed opportunity suddenly became a mathematical dagger. When the tiebreakers kicked in, Miami simply didn't have the conference wins to survive the pileup. Teams like the Colts, Ravens, and Browns edged them out by razor-thin margins. Then came the final blow. In Week 17 against Buffalo, a game they desperately needed, the Dolphins were overwhelmed in a crushing 56-26 loss. Any remaining playoff hopes evaporated on the spot. The 2020 Dolphins weren't pretenders. They were a legitimately good team caught in a rare AFC logjam. And their season became a perfect example of how the NFL can reward excellence and still punish it in the same breath. Part 5, 2023 Jacksonville Jaguars. 9-8, missed out on the AFC South. How do you start a season looking like a legit AFC contender and end it watching a team with the same record sneak into the playoffs while you sit at home? That's the 2023 Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that went from 8-3 swagger to a 9-8 heartbreak in the span of 6 chaotic weeks. The Jaguars looked locked in early. Trevor Lawrence was sharp, Doug Peterson had the offense humming, and the defense was forcing turnovers like a playoff-ready unit. At 8-3, Jacksonville wasn't just leading the AFC South, they were being mentioned in the same breath as Baltimore and Kansas City. Everything was lining up perfectly. And then the collapse hit. Injuries piled up, Lawrence battled through multiple painful setbacks, the offensive line fell apart, and suddenly the Jaguars couldn't close out games. They lost 5 of their final 6, and each defeat felt worse than the one before. Close games slipped away. Leads vanished. And the AFC South rivals, Houston and Indianapolis, kept hovering, waiting for Jacksonville to crumble. The final punch to the gut? A 9-8 team did make the playoffs, but it wasn't them. Over in the NFC South, a 9-8 division winner strolled into the postseason, while Jacksonville was eliminated because they couldn't win their own division and didn't have the tiebreak strength to grab a wildcard spot. What made this miss so painful wasn't just the record, it was how avoidable it was. One more win in that late-season skid against the Bengals, the Browns, or the Titans in the finale would have changed everything. Instead, the Jaguars became the 2023 cautionary tale. In the NFL, it doesn't matter how brightly you shine in November. It's December that decides whether you're playing in January or watching from home. Part 4, 1967 Baltimore Colts, 11-1-2, missed playoffs. Imagine going 11-1-2, having the best record in the entire league, and still being told, no playoffs for you. Sounds impossible today, right? But in 1967, the Baltimore Colts lived that exact nightmare and became one of the most historically robbed teams in NFL history. The Colts were an absolute powerhouse that season. Led by Johnny Unitas, they tore through opponents with one of the league's most explosive offenses and a defense that gave up almost nothing. Week after week, Baltimore looked like the team to beat. And by the end of the season, their record, the winning percentage, the dominance, the consistency was unmatched. So how do you go 11-1-2 and still miss the postseason? Because the playoff format back then was brutally simple. Only division winners got in. No wild cards, no expanded fields, no second chances. If you didn't finish first, you were done. And in 1967, the Colts finished tied with the Los Angeles Rams in the Coastal Division. Same record, same dominance. But the Rams held the head-to-head tiebreaker. That single detail in one matchup erased Baltimore's entire season. Know what's the result? The team with the best winning percentage in football watched the playoffs from home, while fans around the country wondered how the league could let something this absurd happen. Today, the 1967 Colts remain the ultimate reminder of how unforgiving old-school NFL formats could be. They weren't just good, they were championship caliber. They were dominant. They were deserving. But the rules of that era didn't care, and they paid the price. Part 3, 1985 Denver Broncos. 11-5, missed playoffs due to tiebreaker. How does an 11-5 powerhouse miss the playoffs while teams with the same record cruise right in? If you're thinking that should never happen, well, welcome to the heartbreak of the 1985 Denver Broncos, one of the most shocking playoff snubs in NFL history. Led by a young John Elway and coached by Dan Reeves, this team wasn't just good, they were dangerous. They won tight games, had a strong point differential, and looked every bit like a contender ready to make noise in January. Today, 11 wins practically guarantees a playoff spot. But back in 1985, the NFL's old system allowed only 5 teams per conference, no matter how stacked the standings were. And that's where Denver got burned. The Broncos dropped a pair of brutal overtime games to the Los Angeles Raiders, losses that came back to haunt them. Meanwhile, the AFC was overflowing with double-digit win teams. The Jets and Patriots also finished 11-5, and here's the interesting part. They held the tiebreakers. Denver's record against common opponents wasn't strong enough, and that slim statistical margin, not performance, not momentum, not talent, sealed their fate. What makes this even wilder is what came next. The same core roster would go on to reach 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, proving just how legitimate their championship potential was. Yet, in 1985, a playoff-worthy team watched from home because of outdated rules and cruel tiebreak math. The 1985 Broncos didn't just miss the postseason. They became a textbook example of how the NFL's old playoff format could punish great teams simply for playing in the wrong year. Part 2, 2012 New York Giants. 9-7, strong start, missed playoffs. How does the reigning Super Bowl champion start 6-2, look ready for another deep run, and still end up watching the playoffs from the couch? That's the story of the 2012 New York Giants, a team that went from red hot to ice cold in the blink of an eye. The Giants opened the year exactly how you'd expect defending champs to play. Eli Manning looked confident, the offense clicked, and the defense still flashed the dominant pass rush that terrorized Tom Brady months earlier. At the halfway mark, New York sat at 6-2 and looked like a lock to return to the postseason. But then, everything unraveled. Over their final 8 games, the Giants lost 5, and each loss hurt more than the last. The offense became inconsistent, the defense gave up explosive plays, and the team that once thrived in clutch moments suddenly struggled to finish games. Blowout losses to the Falcons and Ravens exposed just how out of rhythm they had become. Meanwhile, the NFC East refused to give them breathing room. The Washington Redskins surged behind rookie phenom RG3. The Cowboys stayed competitive. Every divisional matchup became a must-win, and the Giants couldn't deliver enough of them. Finishing 9-12 wasn't terrible, but in the cutthroat 2012 NFC, it wasn't nearly good enough. The Giants went from lifting the Lombardi Trophy to missing the postseason entirely just 1 year later. Their 2012 season became a reminder of a brutal NFL truth. In this league, glory fades fast, and last year's rings won't save you when December turns cold. Part 1, 2024 Seattle Seahawks. 10-7, missed playoffs. How do you win 10 games, survive one of the hardest schedules in the NFC, push elite teams to the brink, and still end up outside the playoff picture? That's the painful reality of the 2024 Seattle Seahawks, a team that fought all year but got swallowed by the cruel math of tiebreakers and a brutally crowded conference. On paper, 10-7 looks like a playoff season. And honestly, Seattle played like a playoff team. Geno Smith kept the offense steady, the young receivers stepped up, and the defense had flashes of becoming something special. Week after week, the Seahawks hung around in games, sometimes stealing wins, sometimes letting heartbreak slip through in the final minutes. But the NFC in 2024 wasn't just competitive. It was a traffic jam. Multiple teams finished between 9 and 11 wins, and every head-to-head matchup, every divisional loss, and every late-game collapse suddenly mattered. Seattle dropped several tight contests that could have changed everything. A missed field goal here, a fourth-quarter turnover there, a defensive lapse in crunch time. These weren't blowouts. They were knife-edge defeats that came back to bite them in the tiebreakers. And that's where the trouble hit. Other wildcard contenders had stronger conference records or better results against shared opponents. So, even with double-digit wins, even with a season full of effort and grit, the Seahawks found themselves pushed just outside the playoff cutoff line. The 2024 Seahawks became one of the year's clearest reminders of how unforgiving the league can be. Sometimes 10 wins get you in, and sometimes, in a crowded NFC, 10 wins just isn't enough. Which of these robbed NFL teams shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you love seeing the biggest playoff heartbreaks and jaw-dropping football stories, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. We've got more epic NFL tales coming your way every week.